right? It's good for you to double check. And that's the purpose of that field, really. So then we kind of get down into the remediation instructions. We've got a note here that, CUFTR is a very evasive thing. It's very complicated. That's why we recommend a wipe sometimes, right? It will be running processes that hold files open and make it difficult for you to delete those manually because the files are in use. And so we note here that it can be, currently we've seen it hiding in explore.exe, and that's from the telemetry we've received and the things that our threat operators have seen. And so, but older variants, we say, hey, they can hide in run DLL32 and MSHTA, PowerShell, and so on and so forth. All those, by the way, are legitimate Windows processes, right? So we then go into giving you the remediation. So, and these are really written in a way that is simple. It's so that anyone in your IT department can go in there and they can make the changes they need to make, just following it step by step. It's very prescriptive. Okay. We do note, CUFTR does have some self-defense mechanisms that may make it difficult to remove. And in this case, we actually provided a tool. So in certain cases, if we see something very prolific, we will then maybe develop a tool. And if we have done that, we'll put it in here for the report so you guys can get your hands on that to use it. And really down here at the bottom, we've got our footholds, and that is the main event that we do. Those are the persistent footholds that we're looking for. And we'll go through this a little bit just so you understand, how we operated in this case. CUFTR, again, is using things like command.exe, right? We see that right here. And in and of itself, command.exe is benign, right? It's a Microsoft process. But we're doing a /C, right? So an AV looking at this, it's going to see, hey, I'm using a command.exe. It's the Microsoft command.exe. It's going to have a binary that matches a known good file, right? But it's how it's being used, and it's the context of how it's being used that's important. And that's really what the humans are good at. They're looking at that context. They're looking at what it's doing, not just what it is. And so we'll see that /C basically tells command to spawn another program and close itself. Again, that's a mechanism to hide from the user on the machine, right? It's going to launch start, which is another program that's been on Windows since the 95 days, and start's just used to launch other programs. We're handing it some double quote argument here that's blank, which basically that's actually supposed to be a title of a window that pops up. They're leaving it blank to, again, suppress that window from popping up, right? And then we're getting this odd string, right, with a really odd file name, right? It's .30F040, right? So we know, like a human looking at that's immediately going to say, oh, that's crazy. There's definitely something going on there, right? So in the registry on Windows, there is an entry for every file type so that Windows understands how to open those files. So if you look up XLS, underneath that, you're going to have some details and parameters about how to open that, what program to use to open that file, right? So CUFTR actually puts an entry for this file type there. And again, this is how CUFTR is doing its misdirection, right? It's trying to layer these on so that it's taking more time for the AV to look at this and make a judgment. AV has to make a snap judgment, right? Like, do I interfere with this or not? Chances are it's not going to do that because it doesn't want to interfere with Windows processes anyway, because it can destabilize your OS, cause you blue screens, and you're going to uninstall the product. So it's going to layer this a couple times. It's going to go through the registry. There's going to be another pointer to another registry entry. It's going to run MSHTA, which is the Microsoft HTML handler. Yet again, like another Windows process that's legitimate. If you look up that binary, it's going to be okay. And if you notice, we also give you some virus total. We're sending these, like Jeremy was saying, we're sending these a virus total. We got 0 hits out of 69 engines on that one, right? So your AV product's not picking that up, and that's why we list that there. So MSHTA in and of itself, again, it's a process in Windows that we expect to be there. But what is it doing, right? What is it doing? Well, we're passing it JavaScript. I mean, anytime you look at MSHTA getting past JavaScript, you're probably in for a bad day. Like there's no way that's legit, right? So We see some language about an ActiveX object, a shell. We see a reg read, which is basically instructing it to read something from the registry. We're giving it a location in the registry to read, HKey current user software, and then some randomized keys. And then we've got a, yep.
Yeah, if I can just break in for a sec. So let me just level set.
Yep.
So what you're going through here, you may not be familiar to some of the folks on the call with us, but this is what our threat ops team is basically going out and producing, right? So to Vic's point before, a lot of this that's going on and the noise that's behind the scenes would be there if somebody wants to go digging, but how much of this would they have to get, in the middle of? And then what is our next step from here? Or what do they get to actually do something about this?
Yeah, the foothold section is us showing our work. You don't have to know any of this.
Yeah, and this is an example really of, here's an instance where you had something that it's very tricky, right? And if you don't have someone looking at this, you're going to miss it. And that's kind of the point of this, right? So, but yes, to these guys' point, you don't need to know this. We're providing this report to you so that we've done this work and you don't have to. But ultimately, this is why it's important to have humans hunting in your environment, right? There's through our combination of software and humans, we need to identify that. This is where we break the chain in the process, right? This is where we break their persistence. And if we can break their persistence, they can do nothing else, right? They're out of your environment. They're going to move on to the next bit of low-hanging fruit out there. And there's plenty of it out there, trust me. So,
cool. So
does anyone have any questions on that?
Yeah, we can go as deep as you'd like. If you want to do some follow-up, we can do one-on-one. So if you wanted to get really even more under the covers, this is awesome to give you a feel for what's happening and what the threat ops team's doing. Shane, can we, in the interest of time, can we jump over and look at what a remediation would look like?
Sure can. I was going to say,
take a look at one.
So,
yeah, please.
May I make a comment real quick? That the beauty of your service is that your team will look at what this finding in detail and remediate for the customer. Did I get that right?
That's correct. We'll get into that here, and that's where Bob was going with the remediation plan. And so this again is a how-to step-by-step on how to manually do it. But we also have this review remediation plan that we call assisted remediation, right? And it's kind of the easy button. You click that and you get a report of, hey, this is what we're going to do. You approve this, and the next time the agent checks in, which happens every 15 minutes, we're going to send it a command to go ahead and execute on all this and actually go through these steps for you. 90% of the time, that works fine.
Yeah, that's perfect. And that goes back to, hey, most teams, most IT departments don't have the personnel to dive into as deeply as you guys did there. And even if you gave them the remediation steps, they may not have the time to really do it properly. So this is where I think it's really powerful.
Yep.
On this piece.
Does anyone have any questions about that?
Yes, I have one. And going back to my prior question in terms of the interaction with the endpoint, I mean, chances are that maybe the endpoint don't identify, but when you're doing the mitigation, it might identify as something malicious happening to the computer, and then they block the remediation. Does that has happened, or there's a risk for that happening, or?
We don't see endpoint protection interrupting assisted remediation, because essentially the agent is already installed, it's got the permission it has, and if anything were to ever come up as a problem with endpoint protection, it would most likely be on the initial install of the agent. What we do see is remediations, and I'll see if this one, it doesn't look like this one is just deleting scheduled tasks, but no. So down under the remove, it says remove C users Judy yada yada yada. If Judy wasn't logged into that machine, if that profile wasn't loaded, this full remediation might not work until Judy's profile was loaded. So that would be an edge case of why assist remediation wouldn't complete. And then you as the IT team would, or the security team would need to make sure that profile was loaded before, or do it yourself, obviously, but before the assist remediation would complete. Otherwise it would just be kind of spinning. But we don't see other tools interrupting the assist remediation after the button is clicked.
I have a question. So the refresh is every 15 minutes. And if something's detected and a human from Huntress gets involved and something that is considered serious, then they get involved and start the process of remediation and finding out what it is. So it's a 15-minute refresh. If something happens in between, does that automatic detect also and alert you, or just every 15 minutes?
So there's dissecting that question just a little bit. When you say refreshes every 15 minutes and when something is detected, a Huntress human gets involved, that's not quite the right order. And I want to call that out because that's a big differentiation. What we are used to in the security world and what you have been conditioned for the last like 20 years is software creates an alert and then a human chases it down. That is what all of your prevention tools do. And either you or a SOC that you send it to, somebody has to chase those alerts down. That is opposite of how threat hunting works. Threat hunting is, I am going into an environment and I am searching for things that are out of place. So every 15 minutes, the software agent that we have gathers the data on auto runs, sends it back to us, and then we start hunting through that queue. Now, we will hunt through the unknown ones and the ones that seem, for whatever reason, because of how we tune our algorithms, to be more fishy than others first. But there are no alerts that we chase down. The humans are the ones creating the incident reports based on the investigations that they create when they see something that doesn't look right. So there is no SLA of like, every 15 minutes, you might get an alert, because we don't alert on anything. We are constantly hunting to find malicious persistent footholds. When we find them, we create an incident report that looks like this, that shows you exactly what it is and exactly what to do about it, because 100% of these reports have been created by human beings. And then that allows you to decide, all right, do I wipe and restore from backup? Do I follow the remediation instructions, or do I hit the easy button? And does that help address that? So investigations that lead to malicious incidents and incident reports being sent, those can take short amounts of time. So when we see something that we've seen before, that we've written a detection on, that's free lunch. We can report that pretty quickly, but it's still a human being collecting all the necessary information and sending it. The rest of the time, it's investigation based. So it may take 10 minutes after we find something. It may take a few hours. Sometimes we find something that's nasty enough that we've never seen before that will send you immediately a report on, saying, hey, we don't know exactly what this is, but you might want to take this endpoint offline while we further investigate. But majority of the time, there will be there are things that we have seen before that we can send fairly quickly. The rest of it is piece by piece digging through these individual auto starting components of Windows to find ones that shouldn't be there.
Yeah, and just if I can add a little bit, see and as I came on board with Huntress, the eye opener for me was the malicious foothold, the persistent foothold that's sitting there, that's been hijacked, is typically not lighting up any sort of malicious payload that's been dropped, right? Ransomware, something's coming in behind that, which the malicious actors will use to figure out when they want to go drop the ransomware attack, whatever the malicious payload is. So as Jeremy said, and Shane showed, we're hunting in that space, but we have time because that hasn't lit anything up yet, except they've gotten past prevention, waiting to use that as a distribution vehicle to light up some malicious code.
Yeah, Bob, what's the general dwell time? Typically, it's like
average
100
now,
days or
100 to 200 days, depending on the industry typically. Is that about right, Jeremy?
Depending on what news media outlet you're reading that day.
Yeah.
It can span. So the data
Yeah.
breach investigation report usually says something from Verizon, usually says something, it's varied over the years between like 100 and a couple hundred days. But honestly, what's happening behind the scenes, when you hear that, people are trying to make it sound like an attacker is in your environment for 100 days. What's really happening is an advanced persistent threat group, some group of bad people or an individual, mostly it's groups, send out a spam campaign. They send, and this has been this business on the, just call it the dark web, the dark side, has matured dramatically over the past few years. So this has become siloed. So now we've got groups that just do the phishing as a service, and they get out and they get all these people to click on stuff. And as a part of the phishing campaign, it includes something like a trick bot, an emotet, a Q bot that when they click creates the persistence mechanism. So now they've done their job, and they package up and they go on the dark web and sell, hey, I've got 500 enterprises with persistence running right now. And they sell that to the next people who usually do the internal recon and then create the exploit. And so then they drop their Cobalt Strike in there, they move around, they go to AD, they grab all the security groups, the users, the laptops, all the systems, they create the batch script, and then they're like, all right, I've done my part. Hey, which ransomware actor wants this group of ready to be exploited companies? They sell that off to the ransomware as a service provider, or the guy who, the random person or group who do the actual ransoming. Because just because I'm good at getting all this information doesn't mean I'm good at dealing with end users after I've encrypted their environment. So all this gets chopped up, and that takes time. So the first thing starts with persistence, and that starts the clock on this, like 100 days, 200 days. But really, they're not necessarily in your environment. You're just in their queue waiting for them to get to you as the next step, or waiting for that to be packaged and sold off to the next bad actor. Eventually, they will circle back around and something bad will happen, but it just depends on how valuable you are as a target, and who you are, the who sent you the initial phishing email. The other main avenue is open RDP, of course, or the smaller percentages software vulnerabilities. But those, if you get ransomware, one of those three things happen: is software vulnerability, open RDP, or some open or misconfigured port, or phishing email.
Thanks, Jeremy. Shane, can you go back to the dashboard and
I have a question real quick.
Yeah. Mhm.
So we're a fairly small shop. We're not 24-hour. We don't have anybody up that. So if you get something that's critical, is there a mechanism in place that we can give y'all permission to go ahead and just act on if it's critical, if it's after hours? Or does it have to go through the review remediation approval?
We are working, like, on the roadmap is building in playbooks, so you can set up settings that say, like, if critical, then remediate automatically. That's not an existing feature. The good news about most of the stuff we see when you have us on proactively, because the dwell time is usually much longer, if you find something and remediate it within a day, you're still going to be most of the time just fine. When we find something that is like an active ransomware outbreak happening after hours, we are calling every contact we can at your organization. But usually once you see ransomware, it's too late. At that point, you're just trying to scope it. But the point is having us out proactively enough that we catch the stuff that can't then lead to ransomware. But yeah, nothing exists in the product today. That is being worked on as a playbook type feature for an if this then that functionality.
All right, Shane, let's flip over to the dashboard for a sec.
Yeah, do we want to go down and show the other features that we have in the product at this point?
You know what I'd like to do, just to show, I know we've talked a lot about the what's happening sort of behind the scenes. Without going into detail, maybe just show the parsing out of the auto runs, not to go into those, but I just want to show the way that does get filtered.
Sure. I mean, we can go into an agent here, and we'll go into this guy.
That's fine. And then, yeah, if you just click on the auto runs, and I just want
So
just the headings across the top. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, so as Jeremy mentioned before, that we're going to compile, the agent is going to compile these and hash these. And as you can see, there's 864 here. Typically on a brand new Windows installation, you're looking at 800 to 900, right? And so we're going to compile those into these, all trusted, reputable, monitored, suspicious, malicious, right? And really that's what our threat operators are taking a look at. That's the data that they're doing their investigations on.
Yeah, just an idea of the kind of numbers, though. I'm looking at, what's happening behind the scenes and the noise. So how many trusted do we have out of that run?
Trusted, we have 520.
Of the 800 and something. Reputable
Right.
is one that we've seen.
And we have monitored, about 340 monitored, which,
So along all this activity, and this is only one agent, one Windows operating system. So
one
out of
endpoint.
all of this, the first that you're going to see is when it gets teed up as an incident report, as malicious, with that step-by-step action. So you don't need to see any of this unless you want to go in and see what's going on behind the scenes.
The tool itself is pretty much set it and forget it. You run the agents out there, and there's no action until we send you an incident report. It is much different than the other endpoint protection products that, to the point earlier, I think it was Gus's, that you're going to have to fine tune. You're going to have to teach that this is a good thing, this is a bad thing, and you're going to have to then ultimately, what do? You end up turning it down so it doesn't send you so many alerts so you can do your day job. Which then you're not getting the full value out of the tool because you don't have a full security team to run it, and it is more likely to produce more stuff for us to catch.
And then Shane, just one more. Let's just jump to a report. I just want to show the sort of the funnel report, and then we'll move on to the other. There's other components to Huntress, but this is where the ROI is. As Jeremy said before, if you can find one of these in advance, you just saved yourself a whole lot of heartache and money between downtime and what the cost of downtime is, plus whatever is associated with any kind of ransom. So go ahead, Shane. Sorry to keep breaking in.
Yeah, so this is one of the reports, and this is just a way that we're showing our work. You can put your logos on here, but we're going to give you a count of how many changes were analyzed, how many auto runs reviewed, how many manual investigations were done. And then, and it's going to depend on how many computers or whatnot you have, obviously, in your environment. But it's a way for us to show, hey, these are the things that we're reviewing for you guys in this time period. And then we'll give you a blurb at the bottom from an analyst about really the threat landscape at the time. Is there anything that you guys need to be aware of that's going on? Just as a heads up. So is there anything else you want to talk about there, Bob? Or?
No, perfect. Yeah, just to show the volume of what's going on that they're not seeing. Yep, perfect. Right. Okay, right. Good.
And I don't know how we're doing on time. We have a few other value add features here. We can go through those if you guys like.
I think maybe high level on those, and then just a little bit.
Yeah,
more
Jeremy.
Defender.
Yeah, I mean, Jeremy had already touched on them a bit, but Ransomware Canaries, which is something that's obviously not new to us, but there's a couple things we do different where we randomize the name. Some providers still use Canary in the name, and that's easy for hackers to bypass. And we put a special character in the front, so it's up high in the directory structure in your tree, so that if there's these are designed to really catch any encryption activity that happens. If that file changes, we immediately get an alert back from the agent, and we can immediately respond. External Recon is basically whatever public IP that agent is talking to the Huntress cloud on. We're gonna capture that IP. We're gonna run it by a service called Shodan. If you guys aren't familiar with that, you can go to shodan.io and take a look. It's just they basically catalog all the open ports on the internet and everywhere. And so this is just another set of eyes on that. So it's another way you can look here and say, hey, are all these ports expected to be open, or is there something I need to shut down to harden the edge, right? And again, just value add for you guys. And we have the managed antivirus as well. It is in beta. And it does give us the ability to do some configuration here where we can hide the UI so that you don't have users tampering with it. We can set up path and extension and process exclusions. We can set up when scanning happens. We can set up when signature updates happen. And we'll give you a rundown of the agents and their status. But that's about the extent of the dashboard. So just if you guys have any other questions, we're open ears. So
and just a comment on the Defender piece, as Jeremy said before, we're not looking to go out there and displace what you got, but if Defender, the free Defender, the one that comes with standard Windows out of the box, if that will do the trick for you for what your AV requirements are, but the gap typically is management is non-existent. You have to go machine by machine. In this case, as part of the Huntress platform, that's included. So what I'm finding is folks are looking at what they need when the contract is up, look at Defender and see if it'll do the trick. We are in public beta, just means that we're constantly improving and adding to it. It's good, it's rock solid, but we're constantly adding feature sets to it. So public beta is pretty much anybody else's version 1 or release 1. So you keep an eye on it. If you go to a trial that's going to be out there anyway, and then if you decided you wanted to play around with it, it'll be in your trial. The trial is full functioning, as Jeremy mentioned before, unlimited endpoints, and so you'd be able to play around with it and see if it'll do the trick for you. Questions? Anything else we didn't hit? Thoughts?
The Canary feature, are you setting up your own honeypots, or is this strictly from client data?
It's a file that we place on the disk. It's randomized, and the agent basically handles monitoring that's on that endpoint.
Sorry, I meant like the data that populates into your platform. Is it I understand the files there on the client's endpoint, but are you aggregating all the data from all endpoints and then feeding it into your backend system, or is it?
Well, the Canary is just there for us to detect when an encryption or something's changed with a file that's malicious, right? And so it's more of just an early warning detector that says, okay, so some sort of encryption activity is happening on this endpoint, and that way we can immediately alert you guys that, hey, you might want to go unplug that endpoint, right? And
yeah. We place a file and then it becomes a monitored file that during every 15-minute check-in, it monitors it and says, has this changed? Nope. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot more sense.
Along those lines, Shane, can you show the where we light up whichever what the incident was caused by, or what it falls under? That'll show the Canaries and a little icon on the left side.
Windows Defender versus Footholds versus Canaries.
Yeah,
is that what you mean?
Thank you. Yeah. So just up at the top level.
Go to incidents. Yeah.
Yeah. So right here, what we're talking about is what you guys.
You got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have this is basically denotes what service between it's a foothold, is it a Canary, or is it an AV incident? Yeah.
And then as you go down the side, that gives you sort of a master look. And then let's click into Canaries as an example on the left side. What that'll do, Vic, is scroll down a little bit. These are just the Canaries that were lit up, basically, or showing up as an incident. Actually, Shane, if you wouldn't mind, just go back up. Let's click into one of those incidents there. Yeah.
And it's one carry per user profile on the system.
And then
so you can have one endpoint, but you could have 10 Canaries if there are a bunch of profiles on that system.
Got it. And the agent's running in system context or user context, or both?
It's not running at the kernel, it's running in the user space, but it'll run regardless of which user profile is loaded.
Okay.
Shane, while we're chatting, just click the remediation report on that one as an example.
Sure.
Just to show the green button there. Let's hit that.
So if no one's logged in, it's not being monitored, basically.
It's installed as a service.
It's going, the Canary is the Huntress agent will monitor the files of all the Canaries that it's placed, but I imagine it's just going to be able to see the one that is currently loaded and the user profile that's currently loaded.
How does it work in multi-session environments like VDI? Would it load all profiles then?
Well, if multiple users are in, their profile would be loaded. I would assume that would, it would work for any logged in user there. we can check on that and get some more information about how the agent.
So we use Windows 10 multi-session in our WVD environment for remote users. So.
Gotcha. Yeah.
That's a good
That's
question.
good, Shane. Yeah, I just wanted to show on that one canary what that would look like. So yeah, okay.
Any other questions? I think Tony, got your hand up.
Yeah, from a pricing standpoint, is that you guys do like a quarterly shore up, or a, you know, this given month I may have, you know, 500 endpoints. Next month might be 550. Next month might be 450. You know, as we have a lot of turnover, and then also is this runs on the Windows servers as well?
Yes, on the Windows servers. The monthly option is, or the annual option is, you pick what number of agents you're going to subscribe to, and that's the number. So it's not a monthly true up. We don't do a hard cap, and so if you do have to burst, at that point your next gen contact might be reaching out saying, hey, do we need to add agents to this contract? But we don't cap you, because security first, right? We're not trying to hinder our ability to be more secure, but you do choose the specific number of Windows systems you're going to roll out the agent to.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from anybody?
Three, two, one.
I was going to say going
Sold.
once, going twice, but you kind of beat me to it. All right, everybody. If there's no further questions, you know, we'll let you all go back to your day. I really want to thank you on behalf of NextGen, on behalf of our team, Herman and Robert. Thank you for joining. On behalf of Huntress, we thank you for joining us and making the time out of your busy day to learn more about Huntress. And again, if you guys are inquiring about a demo, please feel free to email us, call us directly, and we'll go ahead and get you set up a 21-day demonstration for your environment. And, you know, quoting is simple as well. And again, the one thing that we like to emphasize at NextGen is that layers reduce risk. It's something that if you follow us on social media, or you really see what things that I always put, even if it's nothing to do with security on social media, I'm always putting layers reduce risk. And what this is adding another layer to reduce your risk. So hopefully you don't wind up in the Channel 7 news unless you know you won the lottery from a Monopoly scratch off. I'm still looking for that guy in Broward County, by the way, that won it yesterday. So if you find them, please let me know. But with that being said, everybody, thank you for joining. I do appreciate your time. And if you have any questions, again, reach out to us at any time. And if you ever need to check back to this will be posted on our YouTube channel in about a week. So feel free to rewatch and get a loop. And if you need any more dedicated questions for anybody, we can gladly chime in with Bob and Jeremy and Shane and get you guys a dedicated one-on-one session.
Thank you guys very much for
Thanks,
having
guys.
us, and thank you for your attention
See
and
everyone.
questions. Have a great day.
Nice to meet you.
Everybody.
Bye. Thank you, guys.
Yep.